my name is Aashna Thakkar. I'm Reclaim the Frame's head of audience engagement. And today I'm joined by Anam Abbas, producer, cinematographer, director, musician. You are very multi-talented. Before we get into talking about you, a little bit about Reclaim the Frame. We are an organization that champions marginalized perspectives in cinema and hope to connect with audiences through community building and conversation. And so that's why today we wanted to speak with Anam as the release of your new film is very soon in Flames, which you're a producer on. I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit as well, but I kind of just want to highlight some of your most recent notable works. Obviously, this is not all of it. You've done a lot, but most recently, your documentary, which you produced, Showgirls of Pakistan, directed by Saad Khan from 2020, This Stained Dawn, which is a 2020 documentary, which you were directing, producing, and you're the cinematographer for, which, wow, incredible. And there was a short from 2017, Kendall about Kendall Baloch, I'm saying her name right, from 2017, which you were an associate producer on. And as I mentioned, in Flames, you're also one of the founders of the Documentary Association of Pakistan, and you're also a musician in your own band. So yeah, you've done some incredible stuff, and also as I was looking through your work, just very timely subjects and very like bold topics as well, which I hope we can talk more about later. But yeah, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself now.
That was comprehensive. I'm Anam. I live between Pakistan and Canada, most of Pakistan. And just been creating with like really lovely people in Pakistan for a while and in Canada. And it's such a privilege to be a creator. And I'm also a cat mom. You missed that.
Missed that part. Amazing. So I just want to start off by talking a little bit about your career and how you got into filmmaking. What inspired you? How did you get to where you are today?
I didn't really have like a background in the arts. I went to school, like moved to Toronto when I was 18, and I was in school and studying film theory, which I kind of had to really convince myself that it was okay to do that. Because this is like I started university in 2004, so like that wasn't for brown folk. I don't know if there was very much like an okay, you can go into the arts back then. I think it's so much has changed since then. So it was weird, and I really took things step by step to be like, yeah, this is something I can do with my life. I'm still wondering about it sometimes. Um, if this is a sustainable path, which is a whole other conversation. But yeah, I studied film theory, and then I was doing a lot of like theater on the side in Toronto, and then also in Pakistan because I was back and forth a lot. And then just seeing the gaps in both places, like 2004 is, we were in like post 9/11 America, so I was very much an outsider. I was the only, I think, brown person in my film theory class at U of T. And there was no such thing as representation. There's like one course on world cinema, and like all of it gets condensed into like this one class. The first film class I took was called Religion and Film, and the Muslim representation was East is East. It was just like a brown man beating up his kids for, living their lives. And we're seeing the consequences of that representation today. So and then I look back home, and it was also just very conservative, top-down content. And so I think I stepped into it being like, well, and then I went to film school because I realized that I couldn't find spaces where I could be mentored or where I could learn from others who were doing things I wanted to do, because like nobody's doing what I want to do. So I need to learn how to do it myself, and then, find my peeps, which I did eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also went to U of T and I didn't study film. I remember taking one, I studied media. I took one film class, but I also don't remember it being super diverse or representative of me in any way. So I totally understand that. And also the theater to film pipeline I think is really strong in
Yeah.
Toronto as well, which makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. It just feels the film spaces, even though you might not feel represented, it feels like a lot more accessible in terms of art spaces in most cities, I feel
Hmm.
like. um
Hmm.
yeah, and how did you so you've done a lot of producing, even though you do direct and you are do cinematography as well. But it seems like you heavily produce. And why is that, I guess? What's your decision with producing versus taking on other roles?
I just get asked to. I think it was, when I went to film school, I wanted to write, I wanted to do documentary, but right after school, people were like, can you produce, like, just kids from film school wanted to make shorts and like, Anam, you do it. And I don't know why. Um, and then it just happened to be something I enjoyed, and seemed to be okay at. And then it was just, I think for me, it's similar to the work we do in DAP and like at the Documentary Association of Pakistan, is that we're very aware that we can function alone as artists. And so like creating an ecosystem is really important and supporting other artists is really important. And like I think I learned from every director that I work with. I've only produced like two features for other people. And I've done like a bunch of self-producing also because that's the only way to get things made. So I'm being frustrated with like the time it takes to produce independent documentary. Produced and directed a very guerrilla web series called Ladies Only that was just like for Facebook and no money and just with my friends. And so it feels like the impetus comes from, well, someone's gotta create the space, and not wanting to wait around for like other people to green light something or take a chance at something. Like I'll take a chance. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it as much as it I feel like that's something I hear a lot about, like kind of being the first to do a lot of things or having to like pave the way, which is, unfortunate that, but like it had to start somewhere. And yeah, that makes
And I think it's also, I try, and I don't know how much we succeed, because at the end of the day we're living in like a colonial matrix, is that to make content that is, I don't know if authentic is the word, but is like true to our cultures, and like very invested in our cultures. In a colonial industry, you have to be like, you have to be there to protect those directors and those stories and that content, because as soon as like uh an outsider comes in, it's very easy for things to get manipulated. And so I think that's also like the work of POC producers, is to do their best or best to protect the work.
mm, yeah. And that kind of leads into my next question about so I know that you were born in Pakistan, you were mostly raised there, but then you went to school in Canada. How has that helped you in your career or like shaped your storytelling?
Mhm. I mean, it was my entire film education was in Canada, and it was great. As you know, I think there was a lot of self-educating happening as well, because there were my classes, but then I spent a lot of time at like Robarts Library and like the AV library, just like consuming content. And then I went to Sheridan College for their film certificate program, which was very much geared towards like, I think it really turns out people who work in the Canadian service industry, which like services American productions, but it allowed me to like, I worked on like 18 shorts in like 9 months, right? So it was very much a boot camp and understanding the work ethic and understanding how sets run. Which I don't know if and like the standards to which sets need to run. The industry, like working in Pakistan, things are different now, but I feel like when I was starting out, it was still like an old guard trying to make films in a landscape where that was really happening in an ad hoc way. And so like we're still trying to push industry standards and turnarounds and like just like wellness for film workers. So that's like those are industry standards that I learned from Canada because it is a flourishing industry where there's unions and there's tax breaks and there's state involvement, whereas in Pakistan it just seems kind of like it's still, because it's such a fringe business to be in, that it's not regulated like that. So those are values that I can then bring into whatever I'm working on.
Yeah.
But then also like festivals like TIFF and Hot Dogs, which really have right now betrayed us, and I really need, we're really seeing how compromised they are. But at the same time, these were places where also I had a film education. I volunteered at TIFF every year since 2004 to 2010, I think. Like being like a usher to then like managing Bryerson's Midnight Madness theater. So that was also like understanding, like being exposed to so much independent cinema and audience culture and like what that can mean, like what those connections really are. Yeah, that made me really, really passionate about becoming a filmmaker, those audiences.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think no matter what type of experience you're getting at the end of the day, even if it doesn't directly apply to what you're doing in your filmmaking, it somehow feeds into how you move in those positions and how you treat other people. And yeah, and yeah, I think I was also now kind of going into talking about In Flames specifically. I guess I was also in connection with your experiences. I was um, also wondering how you brought that into In Flames, considering the subject matter of it. I absolutely loved it. I really appreciate the genre that was used um, to portray the like really haunting realities of women, and not just in Pakistan but like globally as well, like can be applicable in more places than one. And how these experiences manifested into intergenerational trauma, I think was so like beautifully told. And how did you go about creating I guess like a safe environment for your cast and crew as you're filming something this heavy, and as you said, like in an environment where there aren't as many maybe regulations in place as if you're filming somewhere else? Yeah, how did you go about that?
The shoot was definitely a challenge, but I was really lucky to have the support of Carol Nerona, who is an associate producer on the film, and she and Zarar have worked on several shorts in Karachi before. And Carol herself is somebody who's worked like since she was 2 years old, I feel, in the industry. So she works a lot in like the commercial space. So she knows everybody, and she had a reputation for being one of those few people who like care about their crews. And so building on Zarar and Carol's relationship, we were able to build a team that had like a vision and then knew how sets would be run, because they'd run sets for shorts before where there was like decent working hours and turnarounds, and like everybody ate the same food, like things that maybe other people wouldn't think about that tend to happen in sets here. We already had set that precedent as a team. So for me, it was very like I wasn't pushing against anything internally. It was really about, this is how we're working. Everybody's happy to be here and will hopefully continue to be happy as the 25-day set runs. We were more concerned about like how to manage everything in the budget, and like sort of at the tail end of COVID also. Those were more the challenges. And I think this is 10 years in the making, this film, like me and Zarar have both been working in Pakistan, making independent films for 10 years. And so a lot of those relationships and experience then allowed this to happen. And then like basic things like, having a woman DP really important. You know, we're shooting like really tiny spaces where otherwise, you know, maybe our lead actor, it was a young woman, it was her first time on camera, maybe would have been the first, she would have been the only woman on set. But having, you know, there was always a woman on set, and that's also very rare. Like the last time I worked on a fiction project that was somebody else's, I was a production manager, and for 30 days, unless there was a woman cast member, I was the only woman anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that really help, even though that's not, you know, necessarily why we're hiring a woman DP, but like it spreads into the atmosphere.
Yeah, totally. And how did you get on board with this film? I guess you and Zorar were familiar with each other or were friends before. How did you get involved?
Definitely mutual fandom. I think I loved his shorts. I saw him, like, he also started in theater. So I actually met him when he first brought a play to my city. So we live in opposite sides of the country. But you know, again, independent film scene in Pakistan is very, very tiny. We all sort of know each other eventually. And then when it came time for his first feature, it made sense for us as Pakistani-Canadians to partner up and try to make this a Canadian Pakistani film, which initially we didn't thought was possible, but then we had our EP Shant Joshi, who's Indian Canadian, come on board and who's worked a lot with Telefilm and like other funding agencies, and sort of paved the way for us to make this a film. But yeah, In Flames was the idea of the film originated from a short that Zarar made called Dia. And there was a couple of elements in that film that I was like, I'm sold, you know, we're doing this. This is so visceral. Some of the ideas in the film were so visceral and so real. My sister watched this film at TIFF, and like later she was just like, is this about us? I'm like, no, it's not, you know. But there's certain things, there's certain patterns that I think a lot of women can relate with. And so yeah, it was I knew Zarar as a person, I trusted him, I respected him. It just made sense.
Yeah. And I think specifically, I don't want to make this whole thing about Toronto and whatever, but like I think that's what's so nice in the Canadian scene specifically as well, is that there's a really pretty tight knit community of BIPOC filmmakers as well, and I think it's really easy to find support in it, which is really nice. Um,
But I would say now, like in 2010, when I like left film school, it was a very much a desert. It was very sad. So it's been a lot of work to get us here, you know?
yeah,
I really appreciate it.
yeah. Um, yeah, I also just wanted to get into what it was like casting for the film, the locations, anything else like about the experience of making the film. Yeah, what was that like?
Casting was handled by Muhammad Ali Hashmi, who plays Salim in the film. So if you watch it, you'll recognize him. He's great. He's also somebody who works in theater and has been in Zarar's shorts, does a lot of commercial work, so he knew a lot of people. Um, the theater industry, not industry, but the theater scene in Karachi is a lot more robust than the film scene. So a lot of Bakhtawa, our lead, who plays the mother, Fariha, is very well respected in the theater scene. So we, you know, and we'd worked with her before. Some of those connections came from our past work. But yeah, Hashmi was just incredible in getting some people together. We actually lost our main lead, who plays Mariam, like a month before we were supposed to go to camera, or a couple of months before, because she had some personal things come up, and so we were like, we're doomed. But then we found Ramisha on, you know, through an open casting call, and there was a Zoom audition, and we were just blown away, and it really felt like kismet to find her because she's such a unique and incredible talent, and not the kind of talent that the Pakistani industry would traditionally support, because the industry is really run off of television dramas, and television acting is so different from like the kind of sort of more subtle art house performances that we were interested in. So I'm really excited about her career, and I'm so grateful that we found her. And the locations, I mean, that's my favorite bit, because I feel like Karachi has not been seen cinematically as much, like, or when we did have a film industry, it was centered in Lahore. And so Karachi's and Karachi is like a city of 20 million documented people, probably more if you count undocumented. It's such a vibrant city. And I think, yeah, I think a lot of feedback that we've gotten from people who lived in Karachi has just been like, it just um, felt so real. And also it's a bit of a love letter to the city as well. You know, it really is. It's a seaside city, so it feels like it's decaying all the time because the ocean winds just, do a number. But there's so much beauty in that, like in the chaos and in the, and so many people living so close together. I love it. Our location manager was amazing. We had trouble with a couple. I think there's a lot of locations where we were filming in for the first time. There were some locations that we were familiar with. There were some locations we lost a day before, but we managed to, we were flexible. We did not panic. We made it work.
Yeah, I mean, it looked beautiful. Not that you can tell that anything went wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
Me tearing my hair out in the background. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, no, it just goes to show, like all your how brilliant you guys are that you obviously like were able to make everything work. You kind of touched on how audiences reacted in Pakistan, like seeing um their city reflected. How has the reactions been in also in Pakistan, but in diaspora as well, so far with your festival runs that you've done?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great overall. Pakistan was challenging because we couldn't find a distributor because it's an art house film that has little known actors. Um, so we had to self-distribute, but we had a really wonderful partner in Karachi where we played in Atrium Cinemas for about a month, and then we went to Lahore, and we're hoping to like still do some screenings in Pakistan, like non-theatrically. It's definitely a difficult subject matter, but I think most of the audiences who are coming to watch the film are young people, are artists, are from our community, and so they appreciate it. And I think generally young women who are watching, or women in general who are watching anywhere, really relate to the film. I had a sort of a white elderly woman, Canadian from like the prairies, who watched the film in Australia at our Sydney screening. And she was like, and she told a very personal story about like property and family and inheritance and gender that like really connected with the film. And it's not, I think it's very easy to watch these films from a colonial lens and be like, oh, this stuff happens to brown people or Muslim people or Pakistani people, but it's really obviously the patriarchy is everywhere and manifests itself differently everywhere, and power imbalances are everywhere, and so it's easy to relate to. There's a lot of women who've come to us after screenings talking about just sharing very deeply personal stories with us. So it's been very, very emotional. There's always an uncle here and there who is feels jilted, but that's part of the thing. But our audience always stands up for us, so that's very nice. For me, sharing films with audiences is always the most cathartic part of making the film, and it is obviously it's emotional, um listening to people's stories and like having emotional reactions in the audience, and like but it's good. Like this is why we're making films, like I think it's making art is processing so many things, and so I feel this is the work that kind of expunges the pain and turns it into something beautiful or generative or valuable for people. So I don't really, yeah, I don't write. I think writing is the worst. That's because that's when you're really like doing the shadow work and taking it and like massaging the things and trying to make sense out of the world and yourself. But yeah, I think actually making the film there, because there's so many other people that become involved in the process, and so much of the joy of like digging into the creative, the technological aspects of like putting something together is I always find it to be very joyous. I know Zara had a really sad post time because it was just like Canadian winter and like dark rooms, but yeah, we really enjoyed bringing the film to audience. We're kind of sad that like the UK cinematic run is uh like the last in a year of screenings, so we're both very sad but also very happy.
Yeah. Oh, I hope it's a good. I hope it's a good end off to the run. I want to close off on some kind of positive notes. What's your favorite part of your career? What do you enjoy the most? Yeah.
The friends we make along the way, I always say. It's really the community. I think that it took me to adulthood to find my community, and it's been through other artists. And in these very dark times, I think it is like we're sustaining each other, and we're finding hopefully ways together to build new ways for us to create that um feel uncompromised. So yeah, the community is everything. I think anybody who's looking at this career from this lens of like scarcity or opportunity is really selling themselves short, because that's no way to sustain yourself in the long run. And I think I can speak for myself and Gerard that the work that we make is really comes from the community. These are not like singular stories born out of our individual selves. They really are amalgamations of like all of our experiences and all of our desires. And so it's really beautiful to have the privilege to create in that way, and to have a community that trusts you and wants to work with you, and then to have a community whose work you love and can just observe also and enjoy without needing to have a stake in it. Yeah, those are values I try to remind myself of a lot.
Yeah, that's lovely. And finally, what advice would you give women and those of marginalized genders who are trying to get into the industry?
That was the advice. But I think also, these are it's a constant process to allow yourself to do things. And I've always been like, I don't need permission for anybody. I'm a Sagittarius. I'm not gonna deal with authority. Nobody can tell me what to do. But a lot of those no's are internalized. And so yeah, I mean maybe it's cliche, but just don't wait for permission. Find your people. Don't wait for money. I'm so I keep coming back to this, but I'm so revolted by the money pipelines and what they really mean and what we now know them to mean. And so, and I loved, like, my favorite films were always like 90s, very indie American films that were made on like shoestring budgets, and like let's bring that back. Like let's not wait for other people's ideas of success, and let's just create what we truly desire with our friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to end off with?
Free Palestine forever.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aashna. It was lovely talking to you.